This program is brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the Alltech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.
You're concerned about revenue growth, but you need to stay competitive, so you reduce your prices, again, shrinking your margin down to nothing. Now what? Well, for starters, you're going to watch our little show here and hopefully take some notes, because Joe Mignone is going to help you uncover some areas where your business might be costing you some money. And these are things that you can definitely fix, to be sure. We're all about lean this week on Manufacturer's Corner. Hello and welcome to Manufacturer's Corner. I'm Jeff Allen. You've heard about lean, and maybe you run your business that way, but there's always additional things that you can do to bulk up that bottom line. So to talk about it, let's bring in our guest. He's been with us before. He's Joe Mignone. He is the co-founder of the Institute for Global Business Acumen. It's an organization which works closely with business owners, executive leadership, and management at all levels to help them identify and reduce waste in their operations, thereby increasing value for their businesses. Joe, it's good to have you back.
Jeff, thanks. Great
so
to be back.
Well, good. It's nice to have you. Joe, the idea of lean, I think probably many people in the audience have a real kind of a basic understanding at the very least, and there are more and more business owners that are starting to apply lean principles to their businesses. They understand the value. And what we want to try to do today is we want to try to use this time on our program as kind of a workshop, if you will, an introductory kind of a workshop. We want to give people who don't already understand the principles of lean some background, number one. And number two, maybe those people who do know about it, included with those who are just kind of getting their introductory lesson today, give some folks some ideas about where to start to look to try to eliminate some of the areas, the challenges that they face in their businesses, some things that are costing them some money. And as we all know, the more money we're able to keep, the better off, because that way we have a little flexibility and a little bit more control over things like prices,
Correct.
For example. So let's get into it. What is lean?
So lean, it's about improving the quality and customer satisfaction. The biggest part is about eliminating waste. Okay. Once we eliminate waste, we're able to improve quality and customer satisfaction. Reducing cycle time and lead time absorbs a lot of cost, a lot of money there, a lot of waste is consumed there. And the other one is organizational costs as a whole. See, lean isn't just manufacturing, lean is enterprise. Every area of a business is able to reduce waste. And as we develop this workshop, we're going to be spending more time talking about waste. Where is it? You know, lean they talk about with Kaizen and other areas. But I think for those who have been doing lean, sometimes you have to go back and take another look. You know, it's always like cutting the grass. You know, you do it, and the grass will grow back, and then you got to cut it again to keep it mature, growing strong. You got to keep it fertilized. So I think what we're going to try to do during our sessions is to help organizations take a look at that. What do we do on an ongoing process? It's not a one-time shot. It's a culture within the organization. And then lastly, it's about how do I increase profitability? You know, we're all in business to make money. And as you said, that there's so many challenges out there, and we're going to talk about some of these challenges. And not only the challenges, but what are some of the costs that are associated with these challenges as we progress through this today's event.
Well then, Joe, let's get started then by perhaps talking about maybe the organization. Let's maybe start with that, or wherever you think would be a kind of a good place to start our conversation today.
Okay, so let's talk about business in general. You know, what are the components of business? We have materials, the materials that we use to build our product, to provide our services. We have our people. The people are, as we all know, are the most important part of the business. You know, a business, if you drive through up a freeway and you'll see companies and they have signs outside. Well, that company, that building and that sign doesn't produce anything. It's the people inside that building who actually provide the work or the product that the customer is looking to buy, and he's looking to buy a product with values. And then to do that, we need to have certain technology. We need the latest technology if we could afford it, or we work with the best technology that's possible to make that product, because technology helps us to reduce cost in the application of making our products. And then we always focus on the customer. You know, without our customers, our business isn't very successful. The customer is the one who pays the bills at the end of the day. Employees get paychecks and they're signed by maybe the treasurer of the company or the CFO, but at the end of the day, it's the customer who buys our products who really pays those salaries. So we have to make our employees always aware of that. And then we have the various resources, whether it's machinery, it's computer systems, it's the telephone systems, it's all the other resources that are involved. Capital to buy new machinery that's required. So we have to manage all these things well. And then the systems or the processes that we use is another element. You know, how do we build something? Processes are very absorbent of time. If they're not managed correctly, you spend a lot of time with non-value work and processes. And these processes are the key functions to our business. And along that same route is what we're trying to do here, is to get people to use consistent processes. Not that in your business you run 2 shifts, but the first shift does the same thing but a different way, and the third shift does it another way. And so all of a sudden we have all this variation. So without getting into Six Sigma, which reduces variation, we have to start off with Lean to make sure we have good processes. And then again, we got to work with the suppliers. So at the end of the day, the suppliers are the ones who maybe bring us the latest technology or materials that are available, or the latest resources that we have. How well do we work with our suppliers? Because then we deal with the supply chain. The supply chain, again, absorbs a lot of cost for a business. So we have to understand our components of the business and then look at where we could then take that and apply Lean to each one of those components.
Joe, let me ask you, you have worked with many companies in a variety of different industries and sectors, I guess, and although your background really is steeped in manufacturing, but you know, you talk about those components of business. We talked about 7 of them right there. From your experience, is there any one of those 7 that really seems to eat into to that bottom line figure, that seems to cost more, or that you've seen more losses than maybe any of the other components?
Well, systems is one big one, or that word systems, processes, procedures, activities, the way we do things absorb. If we don't really define the best way of doing it and removing all the waste out of those systems and processes, excuse me, it could be a lot of waste associated with that. And then again, people. Not the people themselves, but if we're not using people correctly in the right jobs and giving them the right tools to do what they need to do, we're wasting a lot of talent. And
time.
And time. Well. Yeah. Time's associated with that talent.
Mm-hmm.
So you could see the linkage between processes and people are very important. But then we always got to focus on the other ones as well. But you could say, yes, those 2. I believe are very critical in a business.
So what's the next step then, Joe? We've identified the components of the business for the manager of the business or the owner of the business. What is the next step to take? Once you've identified the components of your businesses and you have kind of a basic idea in mind of where your resources, most of your resources are consumed, where your costs lie, what's the next step?
So we have to take a look at our challenges. in getting something done. Okay. So how do we attract and grow new customers? The customer of the future. As we all know, if we lose a customer, it's very dangerous because it takes a lot of energy to get a new customer. So how do we attract and grow that customer? By growing them, I mean, how do we get them to buy more product from us? What other products do we manufacture that they could add to their portfolio? Or what products do they need that we could add to our portfolio so we could grow with those customers? Because customers are very important to us. And then we have to look at the other challenges. Again, how do we grow our revenue and profitability? Revenue is one thing, profitability is something else. Revenue is the stream of money that we make by selling our products, but yet it's not the same as profitability because there's a lot of expenses. There's a lot of costs associated that are deducted from that. And I believe from my experience, a lot of companies really don't have a good understanding of what it costs to make their product. They think they do, but they don't figure in maybe scrap or time lost or wait time. So there's a lot of things there that we all think that we're running the optimum facility or the optimum process. But when we stop and really look at things, there's probably waste going on there. So one of the objectives and goals of our workshop that we're going to be doing here is to help organizations take a look at that, because that's key. And competitiveness, everybody wants our customers, and how do we make that, how do we retain that competitive advantage? We can't do it if we're going to have to keep raising prices, right? There's always someone out there who's going to do it for less, maybe faster, maybe cheaper, but we have to think about, is there quality there? We talked about earlier, one of the things is lean with customer satisfaction and providing a quality product. But we're looking at reshoring that too. So there's a lot of other ones.
It's really interesting you kind of point this out, because it makes me think that, there aren't very many things that we can control outside of our own businesses. I mean, the guy down the street who may make a similar product, he's our direct competitor, or maybe he's across town, whatever the case may be. If he's got the latest technology, he's got the latest machinery, he's got more people than we do, he's able to afford that, he's got all that bankrolled, there's not much that we can do about that. So in that case, the only thing that we can really control is under our own roof with respect to costs, which are a direct reflection of waste, or waste is obviously a large component of those costs. And then, of course, that will have a direct impact on the prices that we will be able to charge our clients in order to stay competitive with the guy down the street. So there are going to be those companies who are watching today that realize, my equipment, my factory, I've got equipment that's 10 years old, and other than making updates to my software program in my computer systems or my network to help me run these and help the people do business more smoothly, there's not a lot that I can afford to do right now. So it seems kind of daunting, I guess you might say, if you're a business owner there and you're sitting down and giving this all some serious thought. But it really does take a lot of, it either requires a lot of time to sit down and think about these things.
Well, that's absolutely true. But we always got to take a look at how well we manage what we have. Yeah. If we could, that supplier down the block, he may have a lot of people, but maybe he has too many people and he's not using them effectively. Mm-hmm. Maybe he has brand new machinery, but they're not producing the right product. So that, there's always things. Having the best technology is good as long as we're selling the byproduct of that technology. If we're making something, there used to be a saying, and a lot of companies do this, we need a new machine. Yeah. And they put in the capital to buy that machine, but then again, the output of that machine, the seller is already gone, or it was a fad, and now we have all this material, all these finished widgets sitting on the shelf, and the finance department is saying, hey, what are we doing with all this inventory? So managing inventory to the correct level is very helpful in managing lean, because there's a waste of inventory. We could have used that money that we invested for that inventory on that machine or for that technology on something that the customer really wanted. So you could see that it's very important to manage this. And sometimes I feel, especially companies who only are starting to grow in this, there are companies who are doing lean. Yes, they're being very successful. But even if you're being very successful, you always got to take a step back and take a new look at it once in a while. You got to take a fresh look at it because we become very complacent. We think we're doing great, but then again, we got to always keep working on it. So there's always challenges that are associated with that, and there's all those costs. Right now we're facing increases in wages that need to be done. We have OSHA regulations. We have all kinds of extra costs, payroll taxes, customs duties, and everything, all this money. But where are we going to pay? Where are we getting this revenue from? We can't go out and ask the customer to pay more money because you just said, there may be a country they could buy it where they don't have all these extra costs.
Right.
But then again, we got to look at what we want. A perfect example would be we have an employee that says, hey, I like to have a 5% raise. Well, everybody likes to have a 5% raise, but what are you going to do differently in your business to help us reduce costs so I can pay you that 5%? Because I can't ask the customer. So as prices go up, we got to work more effectively internally to offset those costs as costs.
And it speaks to your point here on this slide here on your deck, reducing direct and overhead costs. And then you have talk about reducing cycle time too.
Right. Well, take a look at think about utilities in California. The energy costs, water costs. It just keeps going up, and going up. So we're wondering about why companies are moving out. So what do we do, as a group too, to help alleviate some of these costs or minimize these costs?
And it all, and all of this starts from the top down, managing change. And the change could come in the form of what, Joe? When we talk about that, are we talking about in the technology that we use? If we're using the new processes, change meaning we're having to downsize or add additional staff?
Change could be anything.
Anything. Okay.
Anything. We can't be complacent. You have a slide up here I show that talks about the basic business equation. We have revenue and we have expenses or cost. And at the end of the day, that's our profit. But we just can't go out and ask the customer to pay for more. So we really have to take a look at what we could do internally to come up with that bottom line, because at the end of the day, we have investors, right? Who invest in your company, who are expecting a return. And if they don't get the return from your business, they're going to go to somebody else's business. They come and go. We know that from past years in the stock market. They're measuring companies sometimes on a quarterly basis. How well is a company doing? So this is where, it's an endless task. You always got to be doing it. Some companies said, we reached a plateau or a peak. We're there. You're never there. It's a journey. You got to continue working on it. And everybody needs to do it throughout the whole company.
Right.
Everybody needs to do it. As I said, it's not just manufacturing. It's the enterprise. It's people working in the back office. There's people working in the administrative function. They all have to ask themselves, what could we do differently? What could we be to do more effectively? What's out there that could help us? Why do we need to have a wastebasket by a copy machine? Why can't we get it right the first time? Because all those extra copies is waste. It's not only the paper, it's the energy, the electricity, it's the time, people standing there. So we have to be more effective and efficient.
And it sounds like, too, if you're not using your people and some of your most talented people, Joe, would seem to come up with ideas, some ways that you can help your organization, then you're probably not making the strongest use of some of your talented employees because they have an ownership stake. Many of them believe that they do, and you should probably instill that in your employees,
Exactly.
Anyway, in your organization.
Exactly.
So you should probably take
Exactly.
take their suggestions very seriously.
Right. So we have to help them.
Yeah.
We as management, we need to help them because they think they're doing a great job, which they are in their world. But how do we get them to take a look at different things? How do we get them to be more creative and innovative? So these are things that we as the management level of the organization, doesn't need to be top management, but a supervisor, a lead person, whatever, at whatever level that is, needs to get people to take a look at it as we go along.
What's next, Joe? What should we moving forward? Once you have an understanding of the challenges and you know how expenses and costs are really impacting your bottom line and chewing into your profits, if not eliminating profits from your ledger altogether, what do we do next?
Well, I have a slide here that I like to share.
Okay.
I call it the foundations of a successful lean initiative within an organization. You know, I've been to many companies trying to help them move into lean, but I find that they're not really sure what it's all about. And they want to do it, but they have no foundation. And I believe strongly, and lean doesn't talk about a foundation, but I feel strongly that you need to build a foundation, and just like any house or whatever, if you want it to last, you have to really dedicate some time to make it work. So I have identified key elements as we go along here in coming up with the foundation of lean. And it's a bunch of building blocks. You know, this isn't rocket science. So we could start off by just talking about some of these, like
Sure.
training and skill development. What's the skills, what's the knowledge that people need to do their job? Do we give them the tools? Do we have the right people doing those tools, delivering those tools? You know, a lot of companies feel that we give somebody on-the-job training, but yet are we really giving them the right skills to do that? Do we give them the time to learn? You know, the team, this is done usually in a team atmosphere, but we don't give the team time to do it. You know, I also work with project management, and I find what happens is a sponsor or management wants to form a team, and usually there's teams associated with building a good lean foundation to work on a project. But they have these ideas, and they give you 4 people, and then all of a sudden they'll come and they'll take 2 people away, or they'll say, hey, we have no time to do this, we got to meet a production schedule. We got to get it out there. So we cut, what do we cut? We cut the training and the skills. You know, a lot of the machinery today requires a lot of new technology that's out there, some skill sets. Are we sending the people to school? Are we bringing on-site training to these people to let them know? So management has to be committed to this because it takes time. Yes, it eats away at the revenue, but you have to look at the long-term picture here. The more skills I have, the better I know how to do something. That means there's less chance of that machine failing. There's less chance of me needing to ask a lot of questions. I could do my job a lot better. So we have to make sure that management allows training. When you look at lean, you're working on a specific area maybe. So what training skills are required in that one area? What about how do I become a project leader? You know, what are the skill sets that I need? I have experience knowing that even when people get promoted, you know, they take a shop person and they'll move them into supervisory level or team building, but that person doesn't have the skill sets to become a supervisor. So why don't we send them to school, or why don't we say, hey, these opportunities are out there, but this is what you need to do. So to make sure that the person is prepared, or otherwise we're just making a glorified widget maker again.
There's something to be said, I think, Joe, for specialization, and if you have the tools and the training to allow you to do your job better, obviously it makes you more I think, certainly marketable in the job market, but also to your own employer. Conversely, on the other side, if you are a manager, there is tremendous value too in being able to use some of the best on your team to equip them with some other skills and knowledge to go into other areas, so
Right.
that they have maybe skill sets that are useful in not just one but two departments or three areas, which can
Multi-skills.
help. And so, I mean, is that a problem that you find, that where there are people who might be capable of running other areas and who may be not just equipped, but they may have the time, they may be fast enough that they can go into other areas and work?
Yeah, that happens, and it's a very touchy situation, because if we deal with union shops,
Yeah.
you have trade groups,
Right.
and you can't get into multitasking.
True enough.
Multi-skills. So, but if you have that opportunity to negotiate that with your union, or if you have an open shop and you don't need to worry about it, it's so much more beneficial to the employee.
Right.
Because when things are slow in one area, we could work them in another area, and we don't lose that talent then. Otherwise, that talent may just disappear, and now we have to spend more time training them again as we go.
Or in case there's an illness or something like that, which is just kind of one of those things.
Yeah. Right.
Rewards and appreciation, something that I think, quite frankly, and I can speak from experience, is something that we as managers sometimes forget. And it's really important. And sometimes it is that recognition that employees really, really do want. They want to feel like they're an important part of the organization.
Right, and that doesn't need to be monetary all the time.
Right, that's
right.
right.
It could be recognizing them in front of the president, or having the president take them out to dinner, the employee and their family, or just give them movie tickets. But recognize them in the group of everybody. Say, hey, how could I do that? How could I be recognized like that? So don't always think that has to be a monetary. Yeah, monetary is helpful, but it doesn't need to be that way all the time. So you need to, there's a lot of books out there, I don't want to mention any,
Right.
that you could read, or the Human Resource Department could read. They could get involved with this to help you develop a good rewards and recognition, please, and appreciation. Because at the end of the day, when you want to make these changes and you want to do this, the employee is going to say, what's in it for me? And if they don't realize, or if they don't see a value, they're not going to be they're going to be a little bit more hesitant about joining it. Remember, lean is a new name for something that's been around for a long time. Henry Ford developed lean way back before that by walking to a meat shop once, slaughterhouse, and the way they were working with the cows. There has to be a better way to do that. So it's an evolution. This is an evolution. You get some employees that have been around a long time and says, okay, this is just another flavor of the month. But see, what I'm trying to say is we got to build a culture. If you want it to work, it has to be part of the culture of the organization. So it's planting new seeds. You have to nurture those seeds. You got to water them, give them fertilizer and everything else. And part of that watering and fertilizing is rewards and appreciation that helps to grow. Remember, I said in the beginning, it's the employees within those walls of that building that make it work.
And of course, again, to build that culture, you need to have a solid foundation, a foundation of success. We've talked about two key items on that: training and skill development, rewards and appreciation, and there are a host of others. And we'll try to tick off as many of these as we can. We may have to kind of go over them,
Right.
some of them quickly, but collaboration between areas.
Well, collaboration between areas could be, you may have various departments who do the same same processes, or you may have different divisions, whatever you want to say. And how do we collaborate? How do we learn from one another? Another word, you could use that word benchmark. How do I benchmark what we do to what they do in facility B? How could we learn? And what is the best way of doing it? It doesn't need that, well, this is our way and that's their way, but if we're going to get anywhere, we got to come up and say, how do we get one way of doing which is the best, providing everything is equal. So that's why we have those areas, so we could work with and find out how things are done otherwise. So we could send exploratory parties out.
This is this is a really good point that you're bringing up, because I know that in companies that I've worked with, and I've been kind of blessed in that I've only had a few employers in my career, which is nice to be able to say that there's been some longevity there. But everybody has groups within their organizations that wonder why this department can't do something a little bit better in order to make their job easier. And so I think oftentimes there is the attitude that some groups have, that some departments, some divisions may have, and maybe it's due to a lack of a good communication strategy, and we're going to touch on that here in a second. That people have that well, they don't want to hear my suggestions. They're way off over there. They've got their way of doing things. I just need to deal with it. But boy, this stinks, because it's just, I'm here again for 12 hours today. But I think that's where the collaboration between areas can be really strong. There needs to be a better understanding between those departments, as you're saying, of how each does their business and how one side affects how the other works.
So let me give you a good example of, especially about waste.
I was hoping that you would.
So, sometimes if you're Caterpillar, I'll use an example here. Caterpillar uses a lot of steel, right? And it's building its huge yellow pieces of equipment. So they had many foundries, many different facilities that use heavy steel. So what each facility would do is negotiate their own contracts, right? So there's always cost there, because it's not that you're not going to get rid of the purchasing department, but you as the supplier, well, you may give me one price and then you give another facility another price. So working together, collaborating, we could talk to one another, we could combine all our purchasing power, and we can get, the whole company will benefit by getting a reduced rate. So that's a savings of waste. We're spending more money than we need to. How do we do these things? Now, companies are doing this. They do it with office supplies and everything else. They're collaborating with one another to help reduce costs that are doing it. So it's not only how you do something, but what else could we do? What else could we learn from one another by working together? You don't need to. You could have a virtual conference on a topic, and everybody says, yeah, this is the way we handle that. So there's many areas here to do it that would collaborating and working between areas would have a great impact on reduction of costs within a business.
And obviously all of this can hinge really on the effectiveness of a company's communications.
Yeah, the communication is the backbone of any success. Right. A lot of companies, they don't communicate to one another. They work in silos. They don't communicate between one group and the other group. So when you're doing lean, you got to get the whole company involved in it. It isn't just something that's going to happen in one department, because what we do in that one department, for instance, what we do in manufacturing would affect design, it affects human resources, it affects purchasing, because now we're building a new product, we need different materials, we need different skill sets to do it. So how are we communicating? How do we get the buy-in and let people know we're doing? Why? The key is let them know why we're doing this. How's doing a lean initiative, what's the impact on the whole business? We talked about competition before. So you got to keep reminding people, we're doing it for the sake of the success of the business. And you're part of that business. Your job is important. So I think we're beyond the mentality it used to be, oh, they're going to eliminate my job. But as companies get better, what happens when companies get better? Revenues, sales go up. Well, who has to make those products? We need the employees. It goes back to, now we have a group of employees, then we need to train them into different skill sets that are required to make the new products. And it's just a circle. It just keeps going around. And
you can't lose sight too of the fact that there are very real rewards at the end of the day for improved performance, for profits, and for growth.
Right. I mean, you want a reward. okay, we'll have that but we all have to work together. I just can't give you, an increase when you're not providing any more value to me. And that gets you into, innovation and creativity. Innovation and creativity isn't only in the engineering department, as some would say. Everybody, that machine operator, how can we do it better? How can we do it, less expensively? How can we move things? It doesn't need to be very high level, but just take a look at what you do and how could you do it differently? How could you improve on what you do? So there's opportunities for creativity and innovation throughout the whole company. So it's just a matter you got to force. So creativity and innovation could be hooked with rewards and appreciation. Some people, we used to call it the suggestion program, right? Years ago. Come up with new ideas and
put it in the box.
Yeah, put it in the box, whatever you want to call it. And people would be rewarded. But, today we all benefit. We're all working together. We're all one organization for the success. If one fails, it's like the strongest chain, its chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
Yeah, this it causes me to pause just a little bit. I think a lot of people, and particularly those who may be on the lower rungs of an organization, whether they've been on the job for 2 months, 2 years, or longer than that, sometimes they might get the sense that they feel like they're somewhat isolated, they don't feel like they're particularly important. And I think here it's probably a good time for people to maybe do I'm talking about the business owners, managers, senior level managers, department heads, to take maybe kind of a pause and reflect on whether or not they have truly a good sense of the value of their people. And if they have a real understanding of what those people bring to their team, never mind the job that they're simply doing on the floor.
Right.
But above and beyond that, how do you begin to kind of understand?
Well, that's a great point. And what happens is human resources or somebody comes up and they have a job description. If they have a job description and they go to human resources and we need to hire this person with this skills because here's the application and here's all the responsibilities or roles that this person is going to do. And then we hire that person, and that person's all excited because now we're going to give him the opportunity to use his knowledge, his skill sets, and bring value to the business. And then all of a sudden, we're not giving him that responsibility, we're giving him something else to do. And that gets back into the point where, we're not very prepared in having that skill sets being used correctly by that employee. Now that employee gets kind of discouraged because that's not what I signed up to do. And so I always like to take a look at that other building block, says lean building business strategy. What's our lean strategy? Where do we want to be? How much savings do we want to get there? That one's, that works up with SMART goals. They all integrate.
What is SMART goals now?
Well,
let's talk about that.
SMART goals is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely.
Okay.
So we can't just have a goal that we want to reduce cost by 10%, because that's not really, okay. So, but is it measurable? Where are we starting from? Maybe specific because we got 10%, but is it measurable? Where are we today? How much spending are we doing today? Is it realistic? It probably is. Is it attainable? Well, if we have enough meat around it, a good understanding of it, we could probably attain it. And is it timely? Do we want to reach it in 6 months, a year, 3 months? Is it doable?
So the SMART goals are the means are the means by which you would reach the ultimate goal and be able to achieve your ultimate objective.
Yeah, you use the SMART goal because now that helps you get to where you want to be. So if we have something that says we want to reduce cost by 10%, right? Because we know taxes are going up, utilities are going up, and we can't increase the price, so we got to reduce cost. So that 10%, or whatever that number may be, that's just not to me, that's to everybody in the whole company, even down to the lowest level.
Right.
How could that machine operator reduce cost 10%? Maybe he's, just doesn't waste the oil or whatever he uses, lubricants or paper towels, or he takes a look at, okay, how could I do things differently? How could I come up with a cost reduction of 10% on my own little machine operation? So how do we get people to do that? Well, this is how we got to communicate. We got to help them. Management has to help them understand how they could do it. It's doable, but they may not know how to do it.
For those who are kind of listening in over the shoulders of their colleagues, Joe Mignone is, along with John Epps, co-founders of the Global Institute of Business Acumen. We're talking a little bit today on Manufacturers Corner, just kind of getting involved, kind of the beginning discussions of lean. And Joe, what we hope to do is over the next few months, perhaps, come back and start to attack some of these things one by one,
right,
and in a more kind of a comprehensive way, and we'll take some of these items here that we're looking at, and we've already talked a little bit. We've touched on a number of these, including employee involvement when we were talking a little bit about collaboration, communication strategies. We also talked about how to, the need to assess your the strengths, the talents of your employees, to understand the value that they can bring. Innovation and creativity. And I want to talk about change management strategy here in just a minute. But risk taking. Everyone, I think, who goes into business for themselves as an entrepreneur, perhaps to start their new career as a business owner, takes a risk.
Right.
You're stepping out of your comfort zone in corporate America, you're going off on your own. So when you have a successful business, maybe you're a successful manufacturer someplace, you've been in business for years making whatever it is that you make, there are still risks that you have to take.
Always risk.
And so let's touch on that just a little bit.
So as we may know, the greater the risk, the greater the return. The less the risk, the lower the return.
Now, is it also true, though, conversely, I don't mean to stop you, but it's also true that the greater the risk, the greater the potential cost.
Right. Well,
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's there.
Okay.
But if you do your homework and you have a good understanding of what's involved,
mm-hmm.
You just don't jump in the water before you.
True enough.
Before
right.
you test it to make sure you have an idea of doing things.
Good.
Yeah, you could control some of your costs. But if you don't encourage people to take a risk
mm-hmm.
and to speak out and try something different, where are we going to get? So sometimes I talk about use little animals and things like that. So I like to talk about a little reptile right now and talk about risk. A turtle. So what do you know? When I teach and I tell you got to be like a turtle. What do you know about a turtle? It's slow, has a hard shell, has a long neck. So sometimes we need to be like a turtle. We got to stick our neck out and take a risk and try something different, right? Mm-hmm. And be able to get it back under that shell before the axe falls. Because everybody doesn't like the risk. Some people get very complacent. And they like status quo. Everything's okay. But if we get too comfortable, it may not be okay tomorrow because we may not be here tomorrow. Because somebody else may be taking the risk in coming up with the new ideas. Just think about innovation that takes place every day.
We talked to Roy Paulson from Paulson
right.
Manufacturing, and Joe, I know that you know Roy, and we talked about disruptive technology. And that plays right into that area of risk taking.
Yeah, you have to try it in business today because you may miss too many opportunities. The key is, as long as you learn by your mistakes, you don't make the same. Einstein says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Exactly.
Right? So what we want to do is try to prevent that. But risk-taking and innovation and creativity go hand in hand. So that's why they're pretty close to each other on that box. And that gets back to your other point, change management. Nobody likes change.
Especially management.
The only ones that really like change is a wet baby. Everybody else is going to resist it. But yet today, we all change.
Yeah.
We all change somehow. No one has a cell phone. We have an instrument today. And one of the things that instrument does, it's a phone. Mm-hmm. Everything else, we always try to do it. But we don't like to change at work, We get very complacent. But we got to, there's a lot of information. And as we go down the path of these workshops, we're going to get into each one of these areas a little bit more detail, so to help people grow. So that's why I just wanted to spend time today talking about putting together a foundation. And as you see, the capstone here is a system of ongoing lean reviews. Okay, so we made the changes. We went through everything. We analyzed it, we made changes, and we come up with a new process of everything. But now we want to make sure that it's in place and it's being used, and it becomes part of the culture of the organization. Because people have a tendency to go back to the old ways because things are better in the old ways. You know, we always hear people saying, oh, back in the old days. But, you know, if we kept on going back in the old days, we wouldn't be where we are today. So we change. So we have to make sure that those changes that we put in place is effective. No different than what when Manuel was here, Marco was here talking
yes.
about
ISO.
ISO.
9000, yep.
One of the things is, okay, we go out and we do audits to make sure the changes that we put in place. And even if you think about Six Sigma, the last one is control of the process. You know, how do we make sure that it's there and it's always there and it stays in place? So that's like the capstone. So there's many things that go into this. So I want to bring it from a different perspective. The other tools, yes, we'll talk about as it progresses. But this is something for organizations to think about. What's their foundation look like? How well are they laid in the concrete? How stable is it? Will it fall down? Will it be there forever? Or what's that going to be? So a good foundation is very important to putting in a good program.
And so this is a really good place to start, Joe. And as he'd mentioned, Joe Mignone talked about a number of these key elements for foundational success, and some of the others we'll talk about another time: supplier relationship, leadership commitment, lean business strategy, which we've kind of touched on all throughout this talk today, and customer focus. And Joe, you know, you'd mentioned Manuel Marco. We talked with him about ISO 9001 changes coming up in this year. Is set to be published in September of this year. How much of what we're seeing in those changes and with regard to ISO standards in general really do impact the way a company operates from a lean perspective?
Well, ISO 9000 is going to get more focused on customer satisfaction. ISO 9000 is very focused on processes. Okay, they're not going to tell you how to do your work, but you better have a process to do it by. So lean goes hand in hand with ISO 9000 because you need processes to be ISO certified. They're going to come out and they audit your process to make sure you follow what you're doing. No different than the capstone. The capstone is all organizations don't need to be ISO certified. Excuse me. But if you're going to have a good, well-ran organization, you need good documented processes, because otherwise, as you see, as we progress down the path of these workshops, that there's a lot of waste in processes.
And by the way, too, you talked about, we just talked a little bit about ISO. We won't go any further into that, only to say that there was a stat that we didn't bring up during that conversation, but I thought that was fascinating, that Manuel talked to me a little bit over the phone. And while ISO was really started out as kind of an international standards type of methodology, now it seems that the growth of ISO certification with regard to the numbers of companies here in the United States that are receiving ISO certification is actually growing at a faster rate than it is globally. And so, in other words, it seems to me that there is, I think, a recognition by manufacturers across this country that ISO certification, which plays, as you mentioned, very, very well into this idea of lean and customer focus, is very, very critical. And it's going to be, I would think, it's going to play an important part in one company, in a company staying competitive.
Right.
Because we are also reading stories, and some of these, I guess, are verifiable. It's kind of hard to see. There's a lot of information out there, Joe, that those companies that are ISO certified are seeing increases in revenue. They're seeing profits increase because companies and suppliers, those that they deal with in the United States and overseas, want to do business with them. And again, you could say that All of this stuff is really related and plays into this idea of lean efficiency, more productive, cutting cost and waste, and then it's just driving your profits. We have just a couple of minutes left, Joe, as we kind of get ready to wrap up this edition of Manufacturer's Corner. Give me a couple of important takeaways for today.
Well, the first one is understand what lean is. Understand it's throughout the whole enterprise, and it's not just manufacturing. Understand that you need to communicate it very actively within the organization. Let the employees know what's in it for them, how they'll benefit too, as well as the company, and just make sure that you have a good method to roll out the program on a strong foundation, because otherwise it may fail. And you put all the effort in, and you don't want people to say, see, there, I told you, it's never going to work. You have to make sure it works, because it's for your future. It's the future not only of the stakeholders of the company, but it's also for the employees. You know, eventually they'll see it. Companies have increased their market share, their revenues tremendously by doing it. You know, to me, it's an easy way to add to the bottom line without getting more sales, because you're looking internally on the way you do things. You don't need a salesman. You know, you don't need the benefit to rely on the salesman to bring in another $100,000 worth of sales. You're just going to take a look at it around. Like I said, the waste basket. Why do we need there? You know, why do we make single-sided copies? Why don't we use double-sided paper? Why does everything need to be color? Why don't we use black and white? See, it's all these little. Why do we keep lights on? So as we go down the path, when we talk about waste, and we're going to identify lots of key areas, and we're going to talk about specific examples in those areas.
Joe, for those organizations, those companies that are interested in talking with you and John Epps about ways that they can start to implement some of these processes right away, and they want to get right down to it, and they want some time with you guys. Sure. Where can they reach you, and who do they contact?
My phone number is 619-807-4763, or it's Joe at the Global Institute of Business Acronym.
And you'll never forget that email address.
You'll never forget
we've got it on. We've got it on the screen, and once you use it once, it's locked into your email account. Well, Joe, again, I want to thank you so much. We appreciate the conversation, and we'll get back together again down the line.
Thank you. Great.
That's it for this edition of Manufacturer's Corner. Thanks again to my guest, Joe Mignone of the Institute for Global Business Acumen, for joining us today. Now, if you are a manufacturer, policymaker, or educator, and you'd like to take part in our discussions as a guest or member of a future panel discussion, please complete our contact form on the contact page at manufacturerscorner.com, or you can call us at 951-697-3098. And Manufacturer's Corner is also now welcoming advertisers and sponsorships for our program, also the website. If you'd like what we do here and you'd like to sponsor our programs, we'd be happy to talk with you about that as well. And again, just visit the contact page. He says as his voice is going away, at manufacturerscorner.com, or you can call us at 951-697-3098. There's that phone number again, 951-697-3098. We'll get back to you with all the information that you need, and we'd also be happy to add you to our email list to update you about future programs and events. For Manufacturer's Corner, I'm Jeff Allen. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.
This program was brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the Alltech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.